Ranking the top 30 players in the NBA. We pretty much do this every year, and we had to wait until the season officially finished before we could do it again, so let's not waste any time and let's get into it. Starting first with honorable mentions, just so you don't think I completely forgot anybody. Numbers 31 through 35 just barely missed the cut, and they're Brandon Ingram, Pascal Siakam, Bam Adebayo, LaMelo Ball, and Jamal Murray. They didn't make the official top 30, but here's who did. And starting first with Anthony Edwards. He showed huge potential this past regular season, then looked like a star when the playoffs came around. And I think now that he showed that, he's going to be given a much bigger role this upcoming season, and we'll get to see a lot more of him. 29 goes to Karl Anthony Towns, who has been the Wolves' best player for a while now, but based on what I just said, that might change this year. Now, Towns is a great player, definitely top 30, but I think a lot of people have waited for him to take that next step like Joel Embiid did, but I don't think it's ever coming from Cat, and we may have already seen his best. For number 28, it's Anthony Davis. Alright, listen, potential and skill level probably top 10, ability to stay healthy so that it even matters, and he's one of the worst in the league. No, actually, one of the worst all time, which is why he only ranks in at 28. 27 goes to Bradley Beal, who's one of the best scorers the NBA has to offer, but up until now it's kind of meant nothing seeing how he can't lead his team into the playoffs. For 26, we have Kyrie Irving, and he's in the same boat as AD. In terms of talent and skill, he's in the top 10, but the fact that he barely plays really dropped him down. At 25, we have Zach LaVine. Originally, I had LaVine a lot higher, and I really do love his game, but for a bunch of reasons, I just had to keep putting more and more guys ahead of him, so he just kept dropping. And I think it's really only because right now he's just a great second option that hasn't had a huge chance to really prove anything just yet. He hasn't had that one big moment that we still need to see. For 24, it's Rudy Gobert, the newest and strangest member of the Minnesota Timberwolves. Rudy gets a lot of hate, but for the fact that he single-handedly makes up team's entire defensive plan and completely shifts the game for both sides when he's on the floor, I think this was a good spot. With 23, it's Drew Holiday. Maybe controversial to some people, but he's always been underrated. Drew was the difference maker between the Bucks winning the championship and not. The year he joined the team, they were able to win it, and that was no coincidence. In the regular season, he's always pretty quiet, but in the postseason, he proved that he was one of the best defenders in the NBA, and he's the guy that any NBA team would love to have. 22 goes to Chris Middleton, who wouldn't usually rank this high, but again, even though it was over a year ago, don't forget about how much he helped the Bucks to their championship, and how big of an impact Middleton made, and just how different and worse the Bucks looked this year without him. 21 goes to Andrew Wiggins. Alright, with Wiggins approaching the top 20, I get it. It might be a little high, but he was just the second best player on the Warriors championship squad. I mean, he averaged 15 a game and had some amazing defense on Jason Tatum all series long. And not only that, he guarded every other team's best player during the whole postseason run. So if we just included two other second and third options because of their roles on a title team, I think Andrew Wiggins has to be thrown in here too. And speaking of second options, number 20 goes to Jaylen Brown. Listen, Jaylen had a couple of games there where he had us convinced that he was the best player on the floor. And that's all you can ever ask for out of a second member of a duo. He's supposed to have those big nights and step up huge on both ends when the main star isn't always able to. 19 goes to Chris Paul. Yes, obviously I still have to have Chris ranked this high, and it would be a crime not to. The reason the Suns were still the first seed and thought to be title contenders was because Chris was still on the team. His stats and numbers have all really dropped off these past couple of years from what we're used to, but let's also not forget the Chris Paul effect. Number 18 goes to DeMar DeRozan. DeMar really made a name for himself this season and revitalized his career. I don't think he even made my top 30 list at all last season, and I don't know if he would have even made a top 50 list if I had one with the performances that he was putting up on the Spurs. And it's just weird because he was playing his same game this year. Nothing changed with him, he just so happened to be a perfect fit in Chicago, and it clearly really helped his overall ranking. 17, we have Paul George. With the Clippers being out of the title picture the last couple of years thanks to Kawhi and his injuries, don't let that let you forget that Paul George is still a real star and one of the best two-way players in the game. I just feel like maybe he would rank higher on another team though. Listen, the Clippers will be great next year, but I feel like personally maybe PG would have done better on a different roster because it's just still kind of weird with him playing next to Kawhi. I have the 16th best player in the NBA ranked as Donovan Mitchell. Coming into the league, Donovan Mitchell was looked at as the next NBA superstar. Well, now after the Jazz have just been barely able to ever get past the first round, that's kind of gone away a little bit. His game hasn't had any dramatic improvements in a couple of years. His team always finishes in the top of the conference, then the playoffs come around and nothing. The stat that came out this past year that said he only averaged 2 passes a game to Rudy Gobert though really shocked me. And that wasn't a good thing, but now that he's been traded, I'm pretty excited to see how well Donovan does as the lone star. In the 15th spot, we have Trae Young. Trae has quickly jumped into the top 15 players of the league with all the moments, especially in the postseason, that he's already created. He's been on a tear since getting drafted, averaging 28 and 9 this season. But even with that, it's still always been disappointing for the Hawks to be one of the best teams in the league on paper, then watch them finish with a 10th seed every year. But now I really can't wait to see him play alongside DeJounte Murray, because if anyone's going to be the one to change that, it's probably him. He's a 25-year-old who averaged a near triple-double with 21 points a game. But if the Hawks continue to be bad, you can almost definitely expect Trae Young's ranking to drop next year. At 14, we have Damian Lillard. Listen, I think number 14 is a very generous spot to give Damian Lillard after this past year, but let's not let a couple of bad years distract us from the rest of his career so far and from the player that he really is. With number 13, we have Devin Booker. There's an argument to be made for Chris Paul and Devin Booker's rankings to be swapped, but for now we're gonna leave it as it is. And ever since the Suns have become title contenders, Devin hasn't missed a beat. He hasn't fallen off at all, run away from big moments, or changed his game any. He's still been an elite scorer this whole time. I would like to see him making more plays for his teammates though and setting them up a little bit more. And if there's anything he should continue to learn from Chris, it should be that. Number 12 then goes to Ja Morant, who took one of the biggest leaps we've ever seen a player make this past season, to the point where if he keeps it up next season and continues to average 27, 6, and 5 and improves his shooting and proves that this year wasn't just a fluke, then he's approaching superstar levels. The Grizzlies team as a whole was great this year, but they wouldn't have been one of the best teams in the NBA had Ja not made that jump. And assuming they keep everyone together, this team's gonna be scary next year. But Ja doesn't rank higher than 11 because that spot goes to Jimmy Butler. I don't know what it is about playoff Jimmy, but he's a different dude and is the definition of a true leader in the NBA. He's tough on his teammates and he knows how to get the best out of them wherever he's at on both ends. And when he's putting up 40-point games every night in the playoffs and is pretty much carrying the team on his own because nobody else will step up, he's allowed to do whatever he wants. Okay, and now making our way into the top 10, James Harden just barely makes it in. If from now on he's going to be the guy we saw in the postseason for Philly, maybe keep this dude out of the top 15. I'm just really not sure how high he deserves to rank. I think we'll have to wait and see how this full season with Philly plays out before we drop him any lower, or maybe the rare chance that we move him up a couple spots. But I just felt like this was the safe spot to rank him for now. Number 9 then goes to Kawhi Leonard. I've seen Kawhi drop on a lot of people's list over this past year, but that's just because he hasn't been playing, and it seems like when people don't see a guy play for a long time, they forget who they are and how good they are. Kawhi definitely deserves to be in the top 10 players in the NBA though, because I'm sure next season he's gonna come back better than ever. The spot for the 8th best player in the NBA easily goes to Joel Embiid. I wanted to put Joel a little higher than this, but I couldn't put him over the next couple of guys. His injuries are always gonna hold him back from being a top 5 player and a league MVP in my opinion, because no matter what he does, we're never seeing Joel play 82 games or anything close to it. I love his game though, and he transformed as a player last year and just never went back, which is great. Now if Harden does play like he's supposed to, then these two are going to be scary together. At number 7, it goes to Jason Tatum, whose game took a huge leap this past year. We had a few games this postseason where he looked like a superstar, and then those last couple that were just hard to watch. All I'm saying though is listen, with the additions that this team has made, if the Boston Celtics don't win the title next year, it's going to be a major disappointment and maybe his ranking would drop. Number 6 is then Luka Doncic. For as great as Luka is, I just couldn't include him in the top 5 until he at least has a ring. Everyone else in it has one, and I think you need to lead your team to a championship before you can really get into that conversation. And now we're into the top 5 with first LeBron James. And for LeBron, there's no explanation needed. He's got 4 championships, and I know some people are still going to have him as the best player in the NBA or along those lines, but this past season wasn't good, and even though he averaged 30 a game last year, he's about to be 38. So I think this is a fair spot to have him at 5. The 4th best player in the NBA at this point is probably Kevin Durant. I mean, I debated whether or not to rank LeBron over him. I mean, LeBron leads his team to titles and success, while the only time KD ever has was on the Warriors, and now with him demanding a trade to teams that were already title contenders, he just hurts his case. But I tried to base it off of only basketball skill for next season, and that's why I put KD here. At number 3, we have Nikola Jokic. No conversation needed, 2-time league MVP, and when Denver gets healthy again, they're probably going to be championship favorites. At number 2, it's Steph Curry, and some people may have him at number 1. He makes a good case for it, that's hard to argue, but personally, I have number 1 as Giannis because he's really dominant on both ends and transforms the team on both sides of the ball. And there's a good chance the Celtics don't make the finals this year if Chris Middleton was healthy. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, and subscribe, and I'm out.